Ready?
Welcome to The Real Thomas Jefferson, episode 15. It's our Valentine's Day special, and it is about Jefferson and who else? None other than Maria Cosway, A Gordian Love Affair. And that is the title of your book, isn't it? Your
That's it.
27th book?
Yeah, I don't whatever number it is, but it's 26th, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned this last time. You said it'd be a great Valentine's Day. It went like a lot of times things just go right about
Most of
with it.
what I say goes over your head.
Yeah, it does. I admit.
In one
So
ear, out the other.
I have my little Fingal here on my lap, and Jeffy's up on the desk. So, all right, let's get started.
It's no episode without Jeffy.
It'll be a lot
So
of fun.
Yes. Well, Valentine's Day is on the horizon. How many days away is Valentine's Day, Dr. Holochek?
Let me look at 2 days, I guess, right?
Yes, 2 days. And you have a book. And so this episode is going to discuss Thomas Jefferson and Maria Cosway, A Gordian Love Affair, a complete correspondence with critical commentary.
Well,
So you all
literally,
will
we're
have
going to discuss not the episode, but that's all right. We'll do the
yeah,
discussing.
and it's so everyone will have a sneak peek into what they can expect from the book. Is that right?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
It's an extraordinary story. When I set out to write the book, you write it as an historian. You seek for dispassionate, your dispassionate pursuit of writing. It's just the way the story played out. It would make a fantastic movie, as I said before. I love the
Okay.
book. I really, really love the book. I love what my publishers did with it too. That's the cover, Becky, basically.
It's a beautiful cover. I think they did a fantastic job. Fantastic. So I can't wait to hear all about it today. And
He
we have
can't
a unique
he
what?
can't keep his eyes off her. You notice that? Look at him. Look
Yeah.
at Thomas.
Yes, he can. So it's unique, but I don't mean unique in the trivial sense of the word, but in the literal sense of it. Dr. Holochek has a unique take on their relationship, conducted mostly through letters over 5 decades. Through an analysis of their complete correspondence, Dr. Holochek shows that when Thomas Jefferson fell wholly for Cosway upon first meeting her, that love was not reciprocated. How could it not be reciprocated? And that runs contrary to the secondary literature. Wow. Okay. So I can't wait for this analysis.
Yeah, everybody
Um,
thinks that. Everybody just assumes that she loved him the way he loved her, and it's astonishing to me because it shows that they're not reading Maria's letters carefully at all. I mean, you don't even have
okay.
to read them
Okay.
carefully.
So Dr. Holochek will also show that after a rather full and adventure-filled life, after 1787 and after the death of her husband, Maria Cosway longs to see Thomas Jefferson, though Thomas Jefferson no longer pines for her. Oh my gosh, this is like a Harlequin romance.
It sure
um,
is. Could be an episode of General Hospital
General, I
with
right?
Dr.
Yeah.
Hardy and Nurse Jessie and all that stuff. Luke
Oh
and
my
Laura,
gosh.
right?
Oh yeah. Oh, the infamous Luke and Laura. Um, so does she, prior to her death, regret not having embraced Thomas Jefferson's advances to her while he was in Paris in 1786 and 1787? Ooh. So I'm Donna Vitek, and this is The Real Thomas Jefferson, episode 15. So my first question to you is, can you tell us a little bit about Maria Cosway to set the stage for your analysis?
Yeah, her parents were born in England and they removed to Italy. Her dad opens up an inn. His name is Charles Hatfield. So her name was Maria Hatfield, and her mother
Uh,
was Isabella Hatfield. And there is no Charles in Italian, so he named the inn Carlos, which is either the equivalent. I'm not an Italian expert. It's either the equivalent or the closest thing to Charles. So called it Carlos Inn. I'm going to saddle you. I guess it's not the right word, but present a lot of different pictures to give some idea of who Maria Cosway was and who her husband was. when she's she's brought up in this tavern in an inn, and it doesn't sound so bad. Her father was, doing pretty well money wise. He opened up a couple other inns, and what he did was he set up inns that catered to British people in Italy. The Italian inns were rather dirty and mangy, and with really, mostly Italian food and not very good cuisines. It was just a place where you could stop and sleep for the night. Here, Charles is trying to make these inns a place to hang out for people, displaced British people who have business or something to do in Italy. So it's fairly successful. And early on, Maria has several siblings, 4 of whom are poisoned and killed by an insane nurse called Brigida. Maria is next. Maria talks about this in one of her letters late in life, I think to an uncle or so, or a nephew, don't remember. And Maria was next to be poisoned, but it was found out that the nurse was insane and poisoning. It had something to do with religious reasons, and she was removed from the nurse. And obviously, she was taken to convent to grow up, presumably because the tavern was no place for a young woman. Now, I'm going to bring up I'm going to share a screen with some pictures here just to give you an idea of the sort of life she was leading. And this is Thomas Patch's punch party, right? And you see my pointer, this is Charles with the punch bowl. I'm doing something here. And you notice Thomas Patch was a landscape artist, and he was a very strange fellow. He visited Carlos Inn quite a bit. He was, I don't know if he was completely homosexual or bisexual. So he was, I think he was forced to leave England, and he would frequent this place. And you just see now Patch he's making sort of a political scene here. We got Dionysus in another a faun, a dancing faun here, and god Dionysus and one of Dionysus's semi-gods, servant gods. And I was just looking at this, and one thing that hit me, if we have in the middle Charles Hatfield, and then we have some other person that might be in the service of Charles, peddling cigars or whatever he's selling. How many people do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Is this sort of like a mock version of the Last Supper?
Yeah.
With the 12, sometimes you get these ideas and people play around. You see in the upper right corner, this faun with the fawn's ears and so forth. This is exactly Thomas Patch. Patch paints himself into the picture, and you see great, the picture is much darker than this. I've made it bright just so you can see. You see in the lower left corner all sorts of alcohol bottles, and then bottles here, a broken bottle here. People are sometimes staring off into space. This person here's sock is falling down to the right. Another person is holding up a glass, it seems to me. Where there's a dog in the corner, barely visible. Do you see it in the lower right?
Oh, yeah, so I do.
It's just completely chaotic. And in some sense, that's the environment in which Maria grew up. So, she goes to, as I said, to a convent, Il Conventino, and she grows up in the convent, and part of her life was in this tavern where she's seeing, sexual scenes without question, maybe homosexuality, drunkenness, insobriety. And then she goes to the convent. It's quiet. She really grows up a Catholic. So one of the things I know that no one's ever known is that, and it helps because I grew up a Catholic, is that she's got this tension all of her life between the quiet and the repose of the convent and the lasciviousness and the loudness and the fun of the tavern.
Right.
She's going to be a person who needs both of those all of her life. The convent winds up being like a confessional where she goes to tell her sins. So in that one picture, we had Dionysus, the god of drunkenness. We had Silenus, his companion, the statue of the dancing faun. At one point, Maria tells late in life of two important dreams she has, and I'll read them. She says, I'm playing in a vast hall with some of my friends, and this is where she's at the convent, when I saw the ceiling open and out of the clouds the Virgin, in other words, Mary, appeared with the child, Christ child. They descended to earth and started to lift me up, but they returned me again. Again, this is evidence of wanting to have a sort of earthly existence where you can sin and have fun and do all the sort of carnal things, and then wanting to get away from it, like go to the convent or go to heaven. She has another, she says, I cried so much that I awoke, fell asleep again. And she has another dream. The same Virgin came down and lifted me up for heaven forever. And her friend Violante Sarati says, the first dream tells you that half your life you'll be aspiring to heaven, you'll come back to the earth. Not very helpful, pretty obvious. And the second part of the dream is really a happy thing. Okay, now I'm going to go back to screen sharing and go back to some of these slides here so we can play around with this a little bit. See if it'll move to the next slide. If indeed it wants to. I'm supposed to have a PowerPoint here. Yeah, here we go. Okay. She discovers at the convent a taste for art. She sees another young female drawing, and it sort of blows her away. She wants to draw. And at some point, I don't want this covering the whole thing, but at some point, she develops a taste for art, and she goes under tutelage by Sarati and other people. And at some, her family helps her study under very talented male artists. Now, being someone who is doing, it's okay for someone to do pictures, like we have the wedding photographers today. If you really can't be a professional photographer and take wonderful pictures, like for a magazine like Time or something, if it still exists, National Geographic, you can take wedding photographs. So what people would do if you paint, like you see the pictures in back of me, you'd paint people's faces. They didn't have any cameras at the time. So you'd paint people's faces. And so Maria becomes a very, very talented artist. And she will be one of the most famous artists in all of Europe in her time. And let me, one of the persons with whom she studies a little bit is a guy named Zoffany, right? And he paints this famous picture called, I'll share screen again, La Tribuna, which is a famous room in a center for art in Italy. And you notice all the pictures here in the lower left corner. We see some of the people that Maria would have known painted into the picture. Zoffany paints himself into there. And you have some of the most famous works of art. They weren't all in this room, La Tribuna. They were in various rooms of the museum, but he clusters them all together. So she's around all this stuff. Now go back to her dream. Remember, she's whisked up to heaven. She paints in the next photo this wonderful painting, right? Wow. Titled, let's get the title of this. It's, do I have the title? Didn't put it here, but This is a painting of, she was commissioned to paint for some princess. She paints this picture. And what do we have here? Notice, I'm just trying to show you her artistic style, right?
Mhm.
She has earthy colors at the bottom, very dark, almost dark brown and blue here, and more celestial colors, the white, the crescent of white. And this figure comes right out of the clouds.
Mhm.
Notice the left foot at the bottom is, I'll see if I can't put is pointing to the earth.
Mhm. Yeah.
The left hand is pointing down with the fingers out. The face stares right at the person viewing. The right hand is up in the sky. So and the left hand is down. So you have this tension between earth and heaven once again in this painting, right? And you have the flowing gown that just almost dives into the celestial area, a halo around the figure. Is this picture, is Maria painting herself in some sense in the picture? Hard to tell. Notice the sort of earthy colors on the lower part of the gown and around the face and the bosom and so forth. It's a very beautiful painting, very penetrating eyes, but it also, in my estimation, here's another painting. It's a Persian woman praying to the sun as it's coming up. So you notice you got again these earthy colors. You got this figure praying. You see all sorts. You see a V here. Yeah, you get
Mhm.
sucked into the V sucks you right into the person's face.
Right.
Our artists do a lot of different things technically, sucking you in right to the supplication, to the prayer, staring at the sun. So you really the geography, as it were, of the painting forces you to look right here at the face, and then the face is looking at the sun. So you look at the sun, and you're sort of drawn away from everything else. So you notice with curvature, we have a lot of movement in her paintings, and we have the sort of heaven, earth theme. Here's her picture, the hours. And I played with this as well. This is someone else did an engraving of her painting. I don't have a picture of her painting. And I played with this a lot. And I did some research on the hours. I used to teach Greek mythology, and the hours just literally mean the seasons in some sense. Some myths have 2 seasons, some have 4 seasons. And later in Greek Roman myth, you have 3 groups of 3 seasons. So you have 9 hours. But here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, where do we get 10? And I was playing with this. Again, I just never did this sort of book. Notice the continuity. All of these hours are holding hands, are they not? Holding here, holding here. This one holds here. This one holds here. Then we have a break right here. Right? This one is one of the hours because she's got wings. She's holding her hand. This one here, we can't see with our figures there, is holding the hand of this person here. These two are not holding per se, but they're about to hold. There's an oddball here. Which one? Which one sticks out and is not holding hands? You see? The one right in the middle.
Oh, well, she's got the hand of the.
No, the one in the middle is not holding anyone's hand.
Oh,
Right?
the one that
There's
you can only see her right arm.
Now the
That one?
question is, you can't see her left arm. You see her right arm.
Yeah,
She's not holding
right. You can
anybody,
see
but
her right arm.
everybody's holding. There's a break here because this one's not holding on to the other one, but there's like 2 sets of, okay. So is Maria painting herself in the middle? If there's supposed to be 9 hours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then there's a 10th one. Is this Maria Cosway in the middle, just watching? Here's the picture, and here's another self-portrait of Maria. I don't know. I never thought of that, though. It's kind of cool, isn't it?
Ah.
So she's a very talented artist, and noticed how she uses curls, right? Um, um, very popular. The wavy line was thought by one esthetician of the day, but talking about beauty, you have to use wavy lines. It shows movement and artistry and so forth. So her curls of her hair, there are sort of waves in her hat and so forth. Now let's look at her husband's art. She marries. Richard Cosway is, Jefferson's born 43. He's born in 1742. He's shorter than she is. This is his self-portrait. He's said to be very ugly, very talented artist. Hanging out with the Prince Regent, George IV, who's going to be the king. Look at how he paints himself. He was so ugly, a lot of people, they called him a monkey. Does this look like a monkey?
No.
Look at the big, powerful leg rooted, fixing him on the ground, powerful, confident face. He's holding the book mainly almost with one hand, this massive book.
Right.
He's standing on a stone, which is almost like saying, I'm conquering the earth. This is a very powerful figure. He was called a macaroni. Macaroni was an Italian word. We call macaroni today, but remember the song Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his hat, called it macaroni. That was a dandy, a fop, someone who lived in England but dressed like he's an Italian. So Richard, notice we don't have flow and movement. This is a charcoal sketch. He paints Prince George. There's a macaroni, a fop. He's got red lips. Does this look like a male or female? Female. This is the prince who's going to be king. He's going to be King George IV. And he was a fop. He liked to dress like a dandy and so did her husband, Richard Cosway, when they married. So she marries a guy who's not very attractive. This is a miniature. Richard becomes very, very renowned in England for painting these beautiful miniatures. This could be a few inches long, right? And he experiments with enamels on ivory backgrounds, and he gets an international reputation. But the guy's a pig. He has sex with just about anything that moves. You read some of his letters, he talks about, this and that, there's no question he has homosexual affairs as well as heterosexual affairs. This is another sample of some of the artwork that he does with his miniatures. But he is a very, very talented artist, right? And I'll leave it at that for now. We can go. But the idea is, so you want to know a little bit about Maria Cosway. We find in some of her artwork, right? We see a little bit about Maria Cosway in her artwork. She's torn between between asceticism, being Christian, being good, going to confession, saying her prayers, eating her Flintstones vitamins, and then she wants to go out and have fun, like her husband.
Yeah.
So did her husband prostitute her to George, Prince? Did she go to sleep with the prince? It's possible. So Jefferson falls in love with this potentially very wild woman, very talented artist. And I'll say one other thing before I go to the next question. This is going to be my longest answer. She's a very talented musician. She writes her own music. She plays several instruments. She's a beautiful singer. So she is, in my research, everybody assumes she's just drop dead gorgeous. She's not. She's attractive. She's handsome. And she's made more handsome by being so damned talented. And, people always talk about Jefferson in love with his slave, Sally Hemings. Jefferson could not have been. This is the type of woman he falls for, someone who is handsome. Sally Hemings was handsome, but she was way too young, 30 years younger. This woman is 16 years younger than Thomas. And she's super talented in the fine arts. Jefferson falls for someone with talent. He's in over his head here, right? He's really in trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Are you ready for question number 2?
I guess I am. I gave you a long-winded answer, but it needed to be.
I know. I thought, wait, are we on number 5? No.
No,
Okay.
the other ones aren't going to be as long.
Almost all scholars see the relationship begun in 1786 as reciprocated love. You disagree with that. Why is that?
Because it's not. He writes his head and heart letter in
Right.
1786 after she leaves on, was it October 12th?
Yeah.
And when she gets the letter, and he said, please read this, tells her read it in 6 installments, read a little bit each day. And she doesn't, she reads the whole thing. She's overwhelmed.
Right.
And, it's clear. Peter Onuf even goes so far as there's no declaration of love in the letter. Of course it is. It's got this head and heart, talking. We've talked about this before, so I don't need to rehash. But she's overwhelmed. She loves the attention. This is Maria Cosway. She is a woman who, if she's around men, she expects every man to fall for her. And when we see some of her correspondence or some of the diaries of some of the men with whom she went to school or whom she was schooled with, some of them laugh at her because she's falling in love with a lot of young artists and so forth. And one guy just laughs at her and says she's a clown. So I get the impression that she was handsome, not extraordinarily beautiful. She was very talented. And she had a lot of potential suitors. Many turned her down because of her talent. And she was not bad to look at. So she writes back and basically says, oh, I don't know what to say. You're too smart for me. And she's evasive. She doesn't say, oh my goodness, it's a declaration of I feel the same way for you. She doesn't say any of that. She just says, she goes, well, I can't write the way you do. I read it all in one time. I really missed all my friends in France, but now that I'm back in London, that longing, that sorrow is placated by the new friends that I'm meeting again in London.
Yeah.
Jefferson is just a friend, a very important friend, but a friend. And that letter breaks his heart, right? His heart is broken. He, in his clumsy way, he bears his soul to poor old Maria, and she breaks his heart. But it's typical what I've said in my book on psychobiography of American Life. When Jefferson falls in love, he falls. That's why he becomes stoic-like later, because he can't control his emotions. It's better not to, as the Stoics said, it's better to not have any display of emotions than to try to hold them in check, because you can't hold them in check if you try to. So don't even let them enter in the first place. And that's how Jefferson behaves. She doesn't fall for him. He's broken. She goes back to Paris the next year without her husband, who's engaged in painting projects in London. She stays. Jefferson is at the western part of Paris on the outskirts at Hotel Languiac. She is far away from him with Princess Lubomirsky, Polish princess. And Jefferson complains to John Trumbull, well, she's so far away, it's hard to meet her. Whenever I chance to stop at her place, she's not there. And whenever she chances to stop at my place, I'm not there. I don't buy any of that. She doesn't want to see him. She intentionally stays far away from him. She doesn't want to see him. And Jefferson is rationalizing. So she calls herself an enfant gâté, a spoiled child. She wants, and she keeps writing letters to Jefferson. Well, how come you don't write another head and heart letter, this and that? Jefferson can't. His heart's broken. But she expects that from him because she expects it from everybody who falls for her. She's not the type of woman who's going to let someone who's in love with her let go. She's hooked him. He's going to stay hooked if she can do it. Other guys see that in her and they laugh at her, right? Call it insecurity. So she's not in love. Sad, huh? Poor Tommy.
It is, yeah. As you tell the story, there's a lengthy lull in the relationship. Thomas Jefferson sort of falls out of love with Maria Cosway, and Maria Cosway, who is part angel and part devil, has certain extramarital adventures. Tell us about that lull.
I can't go into all the details because there's just too much going on. And there's stuff about which we don't know. She has a baby in 1790 with her husband. So the correspondence roughly ends in 1805, and then it's picked up in 1819. So there is that lull. But she has a baby in 1790. And Louisa Paulina Angelica Cosway.
Mm-hmm.
You read whenever she talks about her daughter, it's the child.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't say my beautiful daughter. She talks about it. I have a lovely little girl, but it's also the girl, the child. There's a distance.
Mm-hmm.
After she has the child, she falls into a funk, a depression, and she leaves London. And she leaves her newborn baby in London.
Oh.
And she's gone for a large number of years, quite a few years.
Wow.
She hangs out with the world's foremost castrato singer called Luigi Marchesi. And he's a castrated. So he sings, and but he is a fop, a dandy. He is loved by everyone, and he gives shows. Everybody shows up, and she's hanging around with him. She presumably even takes up residence with him, and it's scandalous. All the people who know what she's doing. Well, here's this Catholic woman who has a husband and a daughter, and she's not with her husband and daughter. She's hanging around with the singer. He comes up to her box after a break in his performance at one time. So it's very scandalous. While she's doing that, her husband is doing whatever he's doing. He takes up with another painter, female painter whose name escapes me, and they go on a quote unquote painting tour, which they travel around several cities, and they're having sex. And he even writes in one of his journals, in a journal entry, well, yeah, she's much better sexually than my wife is. And he gets into graphic details. And it's a very pornographic letter. And he's a very crude, it shows you the sort of dissipation that some of these painters had, right? And we know that Prince George, the Prince Regent, who'd become king, was a very dissipated person. Had he ate too much, he was fat, he loved to have sex, get drunk. It's a strange thing. So at some point, right, after leaving Marchesi, she attempts to go to another convent to repent, and the Catholic nuns don't really accept her too easily. She's pissed off about that. She goes, well, I want to go to the convent, and there, because these women just don't understand.
Right.
She's not wanted there. Anyway, so that's part of what happens in the lull. Jefferson doesn't write her. She doesn't write him. They resume in 1819.
Okay. Wow. Does he, well, I guess I don't know if I should throw this in here. Does he know about, is he aware?
Yeah, she writes him about having money to come back, and he doesn't give her any money. And at some point, she does come back, and with the blessing of her husband, presumably. It wasn't, the very fact that she speaks to her daughter as the child all the time, a lot of the time. Does she hate the child because it's the offspring of her and her husband, whom she doesn't care for?
Right. Or postpartum depression too.
Yeah, but I mean, for how many years? 6 years or so? I don't remember how many years she's gone, but she leaves her newborn child. That's not normal.
Yeah,
the mother wants to be with her child. She might feel that for a few months.
Yeah. Wow. Question number 4. Maria Cosway does return home to her husband in London and resumes her wifely duties. Wow. Can you fill us in here?
Yeah, her daughter dies in 1796. Her husband draws a picture of her in a coffin, and I don't know how she felt, but I imagine she's feeling Christian guilt. I left my daughter. I come back, and not long she dies. And she feels, So she's back before the child dies. And when the child dies, I'm sure she feels bad. She will open up a school for Catholic girls in Lodi, Italy. There's a webpage for Maria Cosway there. She's much loved in
Oh,
Lodi
wow.
because of the school, Catholic school.
Oh,
And in my one fictive novel about Thomas Jefferson, I talk a lot about Maria Cosway and that. But I think she's opening up a school for girls, partly because Thomas Jefferson's got University of Virginia. It's number one.
right.
Partly because of the guilt she feels upon the death, not being a good mother. If she can't be a good mother to her child who's dead, she could be a mother to other Catholic girls who need a mother. And
Right.
she's in my estimation, she's miserable when she starts the school.
Oh, wow. How everything took a turn. Question number 5. There is something very sad about the end of their correspondence. Can you please tell us about that?
There is, and I'm going to share the screen again. Stuff comes up here. All right, let me get the full screen. Well, you can see that, I guess.
Yeah.
In her last 5 letters, I said in 1819, the correspondence is resumed and it's on her. I think what happens is that she realizes that Jefferson is this great man and I'm just an ordinary person. And, he's got better things to do. In her last 5 letters, the 4 prior to the last, look at the red. There is longing to be with Jefferson. 1819, was there not so great, should be were, was there not so great a distance between us? I should end my letter here, but I can't because there is. In other words, I'd like to be with you. Implicit. Now, the other 3 are explicit. 1821, I wish Monticello was not so far, her italics. I would pay you a visit if it was not ever so much out of my way, but it's impossible. 1822, I wish I could see you or your charming Monticello. Could I drop back some of my years? I should be happy to pay you a visit. There's the Atlantic Ocean. 1823, I wish I could come and learn from you. Was it not the furthest part of Europe? Nothing would prevent me, but that immense sea makes it a great distance. She misses him, clearly. He doesn't say any of this in his last letters. I think what's going on is she is in love with him in a sort of non-sexual way here. She's like saying, all the years this guy was in love with me, he becomes president. I could have left my husband. I could have gone with him and been with him. And so she wants to start this school for girls to be, and she even says it sometimes. I want you to tell me about how to be a teacher, how to open a school. And in her last letter, we talked about this on another episode, but it's worth covering. It's so sad. She is painting the 4 corners of the earth. Very last letter in their correspondence. Jefferson never answers this one, by the way. It breaks my heart. I love Maria, by the way. I really love this book because my heart goes out to her. She says, I wish so much to hear from you and how you go on with your fine seminary. I had my great saloon, it should be salon, painted, representations of the various parts of the world and the most distinguished objects in them. We can make it smaller so we can see the whole thing. In the most distinguished objects where I'm in them, I have at a loss for America, as I found very few small prints. However, Washington town is marbled, and I have left a hill barren, Monticello, as I would place Monticello, and the seminary, University of Virginia. So she's got these bare spots for University of Virginia and Monticello. If you favor me with some description, I might have introduced you, would oblige me much. I am just setting out for my home. Pray write me. Jefferson never writes back. I have no idea if those pictures ever get painted or they're just open spots in the wall. I'd like to think she leaves it bare as a sound of her broken heart that Jefferson never writes back. Very sad, isn't it?
It is. It is. Wow.